CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, is brought to you by Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program in Des Moines on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And again, it's repeated on Wednesday evening at 9:30, all on Mediacom Cable Channel 15. You can email us at vocaliowa@mchsi.com or give us a call. We try to help people on a one-to-one basis. We've had about 20 years of experience, so we believe we can be of some help to parents out there that's just getting involved with the system. My number is 515-276-3956. John's number is 515-282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and yes, we promised that, or at least gave some hint that we might be showing up in the Council Bluffs, Omaha area, Don. And I wonder if you have anything that gives us an idea about where that is happening. Well, let's see if we can get that information up on the screen for you. Cox Cable, Omaha Council Bluffs on Thursday, 4:30 p.m. on Channel 23, and that's on every other Thursday. You won't have it every week like we have it here in the Des Moines area, but one of these days perhaps that could happen. So Cox Cable, Thursday, 4:30, Channel 23.
So if you miss it on one Thursday of the week, tune in again the next Thursday at 4:30 p.m. and we hope we'll be on the air.
Okay, you bet. Okay, so welcome to those folks in the Council Bluffs area. You know, there's a number of things that have been happening in the child protection area. July brings in a whole raft of new laws, doubling prison sentences and making life sentences out of certain kinds of child abuse cases. And they really think that that is going to be the winner, that is going to solve all of our problems. Well, instead of solving problems, it's going to create some real problems, because in the next budget year, they're going to have to find $5.2 million in order to pay off what it's going to cost to actually run this whole system. Can you imagine $5.2 million to do something that we've have not done before, but we're going to really show them, we're going to put people away for life for child abuse, and that is really going to solve all of our problems. They're going to do all kinds of DNA work. All the pet projects that were on the list of the things to do list for the Attorney General's office, he got everything that he wanted, even though it's going to cost taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. In my estimation, it would be a wiser idea to say, how is this new system of greater punishment going to be of assistance? Sure, we don't like child abuse, but are we really solving any problems when, in the midst of a budget crisis, we're going to pull off $5.2 million, and eventually that'll go in 4 years after the next budget year. We'll be paying $12 million just for this segment of child protection. Are children worth it? Yeah, children are certainly worth millions and millions, but I don't think that the problem solving will be taken care of. I don't think the solutions are any closer, simply because of all of these new laws. And do you know that the punishment is really intense for those people who are innocent. And in these areas, it's not difficult to incarcerate innocent people because they just don't have the kind of power, um, investment in money that it would take to hire the expert witnesses and the attorneys to keep out of jail. So we're going to find a lot of people forced into all kinds of sad situations simply because false allegations arise. Does that mean that all cases are false? No. But I don't think that I didn't read in the new law that there was anything there that would bring any kind of measurable change. Well, one of the things that makes it difficult to influence public policy is when the people in government decide that they're going to cover up everything. Broadlines Hospital is a Polk County-run hospital. Its budget comes out of the budget of the Board of Supervisors. In fact, they have their own taxing authority. They worked like crazy in the state legislature to get their own taxing authority so they can tax just like a school district or a municipality or anything else. Then they can cover up anything that they do. Of course, they can go to war and hire their attorneys. And in this particular case, we talk about Broadlawn's lawyers black out details of a $160,000 legal bill. And the reason why you do that is you cover up the naughtiness that can go on behind the scenes. And then, because of the fact that we do have what they call a sunshine law, and Don can tell you all about Chapter 22 of the Code, that opens up government and makes all documentation accessible, but then there are 54 exceptions. And so Broadlines latches onto one of those exceptions. In one case where I fought Broadlines, they said, well, they couldn't let me see the contract that had to do with how they do their bill collecting because it would reveal a trade secret. So that was one of the exceptions. You can't see anything that government does if they can claim that it's a trade secret. In this particular case, they are claiming lawyer-client privilege. Now, who is the client? The client is our servant, the people who work at Broadlawns. So pray tell, if they're the servant of the people, how can they claim a client privilege that the rest of us, so the rest of us cannot see the documentation, the explanations? Broadlines Medical Center last week gave up its fight to prevent nurses from unionizing and is keeping a secret of the details of what the lawyers did to earn $160,000 in a losing cause. The Des Moines Register asked to review the lawyers' bills last week after the Public Hospitals Board voted to end the union battle. Broadlawn's chief executive officer, Susan Hunsaker, it should be Attila the Hunsaker, at first said she didn't think she could comply because the records might include medical information. You see, there's another exception to what we call the Sunshine Law, where government operates openly and without secrets. So she said it could be could contain medical information. Then she said the bills could be kept confidential under attorney-client privilege. You see, if one exception doesn't work, they can jump to another. The newspaper objected, contending the bills were public records, how taxpayers' money was spent. Good for the Des Moines Register. The hospital spokesman then said the bills would be released in their entirety. but they were released this week with large portions crossed out in black marker. The hospital's main lawyer, Noreen Jacobs, said that she had her staff black out sections that were covered by attorney-client privilege rules.
How do we know they were all covered that way, John?
It's hard to tell. You see, you can't tell until it's revealed. Remember, we got a document like that in 1992, Don, when we went to court, and they finally gave us the information we were seeking, but it was all blacked out.
And then we took it a step higher, and they give us some more. But we kept losing in court, but we kept gaining documentation, didn't
Right.
we?
Stay with your mic. We're having a terrible time keeping that volume up on your mic. Those included most descriptions of what she and their attorney from Kutak Rock law firm did to earn their $250 to $290 an hour. That's more than I have ever earned. $250 an hour, up to $290 an hour. Hunsacker's spokesman, Mickey Steyer, said that the law firm made the call to black out the portions of the hospital's records. It wasn't Susan's decision, Steyer said. In other words, it was the lawyers who made the attorney-client privilege, and you'll learn later on that when attorney-client privilege is claimed, the claim has to be made by the client, not the attorney. In a prepared statement released Tuesday, Steyer said the law firm followed common practices in keeping billing details confidential to protect legal strategy. Oh yeah, we don't want to do anything in public that would tip our hands legally. Open access is a valuable public right that we at Broadlines greatly respect. Sure they do. They didn't like for me to be videotaping out there, though. There were very few times when open access should be restricted. This is one of those times, she said. It sounded like a story we heard Terrance tell us about the disasters at the courthouse, but this is one of those times when they take the money and put it in the lobby and burn it.
And DHS is always using one of those times.
That's right.
In one way or another.
An open records advocate said the attorney-client privilege rules are designed to protect the client, which in this case was a government agency. It seems to me that they're taking it backwards, that the public entity is doing this to protect the attorney, said Kathleen Richardson, Executive Secretary of the Iowa Freedom Foundation Council. Richardson noted that the union fight is over, which should ease concerns about sharing tactical information. She said that the state's open records law might allow keeping some of the information from the public, but she said that the hospital was under no obligation to keep it secret. State Ombudsman William Angrek said that the bills were among the most heavily blacked out government documents he had ever seen. A lawyer in Angrick's office, which advises government officials on open records question, agreed with Richardson that Broadlines could release unedited documents if it wanted to. The records stem from the hospital's attempt to overturn a 2004 election, in which its nurses voted to join the Service Employees International Union, and the election was upheld twice by state regulators, and a district judge ordered Broadlines to begin negotiating a contract with the union. Critics accused the hospital leaders of wasting scarce money by drawing out the fight. And I should mention to you that this Susan Hunsaker, who is the chief executive officer of Broadlines Hospital, makes more money. Her salary is higher than that of the governor. Now, how can you justify paying a chief executive officer of a poor man's hospital more money than you pay the governor? So I think there's probably a lot of other things that ought to be looked into other than just secrecy in government. Paul Gillespie, chairman of the Broadlines publicly elected Board of Trustees, said Tuesday that He wasn't sure why Jacobs argued or urged that the details of her bills be withheld. He said he trusted her advice and Hunsaker's judgment. Maybe we ought to stop trusting the judgment of people like Hunsaker, you suppose? Whatever they've decided is proper and legal, I have to go along with, he said. Nicholas Cortelli, a Des Moines lawyer and past president of the Iowa Bar Association, and I'm sure that Terrance would back anybody who speaks for the Iowa Bar Association, said most lawyers would advise against waiving attorney-client privilege rights. Cortelli said waiving those rights could set a precedent under which the client could be forced to waive them in future cases. However, he said that the client has to make the call, not the attorney. See, in this case, it's the attorneys that are making the call. They're doing and they're wielding the black marker. Jacobs did not respond to a question about how much she intends to charge Broadlines for the services of blacking out the bills. Can you imagine the job of flashing that marker across the pages? I suppose she'll have to charge him for that. In 2002, the Register went to court after Broadlines refused to release emails between Hunsaker and the board members. And the emails discussed a controversial decision to evict a outpatient clinic for the poor. Certainly, they couldn't deal with poor people.
John, do you think they need some paralegal help blacking out? I mean, sure, they can pay a hefty portion of the $250 an hour to the paralegal.
I would think so. Anything less than $250 would be a bargain.
I'll do it for $100 an hour.
Okay.
Would you really lower yourself to that
No,
level?
I'm just joking.
The emails discussed controversial decision to evict the outpatient clinic for the poor. Jacobs contended they weren't public documents because they were informal. But the hospital wound up surrendering them and reimbursing the newspaper for $6,000 for legal fees. Well, those are some of the kinds of things that you run into, and the reason why I mention it is because those are some of the things that you run into in trying to defeat your child abuse reports. And we've told you on this program that it's essential that if you get a child abuse report to you about you, that you resist that report. And you can go to the website for the Department of Human Services, which is www.state.ia.us. And in that will be a tab that you can call down on appeals. And that appeals section will show you how you can resist any kind of an assessment that you have against you that shows you to be a perpetrator of child abuse, because you don't need that on your record. It can go against you. Well, we need to, from time to time, talk about court issues. And we have someone who's spent quite a bit of time in court, someone who does a good deal of research on court issues and issues having to do with the judiciary. I think that the judiciary deserves, in cases where they have worked hard, deserve our support and our admiration. I have not seen that a whole lot in Polk County or in the state of Iowa. We have all kinds of judges that are serving, and they simply appear to be judges who couldn't make it as attorneys, so they had to give them a judgeship. Well, let's get into some real cases here, and to do so, we'll talk to Terrance Walker.
Thanks for having me on the show once again, Don. And yes, as John said, I am one of the court advocates here in the state of Iowa. One of the only one with a voice, actually, I would say. And you won't hear this anywhere, but it's some information that needs to be shared. Our court systems here in the United States, and in Iowa in particular, are in disarray. They're not functioning as they're supposed to, as they were laid down to be functioned in black and white. I'm sure that it doesn't take a whole lot of people for you to talk to find out that this is the case. You can talk to 3 or 4 people, and I could guarantee you that 1 out of those 3 people would have a negative experience in the courts. That's because we have allowed this system to function or dysfunction for so long, and it's gone along under our eyes, under the radar, without detection, because we're naive Americans. We believe wholeheartedly in our legal institution is working, and you know, there's nothing that the media is going to do, the normal media is going to do, to kind of shed light on the fact that it's not, because they're so afraid of legal action against them. Well, I'm one party that's not, because what I'm bringing to you each week is the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth about the judiciary and what's going on here in the nation. That's why I lead a group called Vote Iowa Judges Out, VJO. We intend to vote judges out, not necessarily all of them. That may be a good set of goals, however, but we're trying to focus on a lot of them because they're not doing their jobs, as I share with everyone week to week. I ran across an interesting article here this week by a fellow by the name of Lee Harris on the TextCentralStation.com. He wrote an article called "Can a People Have Too Much Respect for the Law?" Because oftentimes I feel that we do here as Americans. He quotes a book, The New America, by a fellow by the name of William Hepworth Dixon, who came to America in 1867. Now, this is written a long time ago, but it still has every bit of applicability to our time. He quotes this book as stating one of the things that he deplored about the national character of Americans is that our, quote, deference to the law and to everyone who wears a semblance of lawful authority is so complete as to occasion a traveler some annoyance and more surprise, Dixon wrote. Quote, every dog in office is obeyed with such unquestioning meekness that every dog in office is tempted to become a cur. Dixon singled out the justices of the Supreme Court, noting with apparent dismay that they were, quote, treated with a degree of respect akin to that which is paid to an archbishop in Madrid and to a cardinal in Rome. Then he concludes with an admonition. More than once I have ventured to tell my friends that this habit of deferring to law and lawful authority, good in itself, has gone to them in extremes and would lead them, should they let it, into the frame of mind for yielding to the usurpation of any bold despot who may assail their liberties, like Caesar, in the name of law and order. This is what's happened here in America. This is what's happened here in Iowa. And I'm sure it's no different over there in Nebraska and the Omaha side. We have a system of law which is supposed to protect our rights. It sounds good in black and white. You know, the Constitution, it is a admirable document. Yet, we can think of a lot of examples where the Constitution, day to day, is utterly meaningless when it comes to judges. One such case came to light here just recently, last week, and I'm going to quote an article. If you could just show that article for me, Don. This is from the Boston Herald staff, June 25th, 2005, bostonherald.com. The United States Supreme Court case. It's quoted, the court Your home is not your castle anymore. No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session, Mark Twain wrote. Well, now we can say the same for the U.S. Supreme Court, too. The High Court's 5-4 decision handed down Thursday vastly expands the right of governments to seize property for a variety of ill-defined, quote, public purposes. It used to be that the notion of public benefits that warrant eminent domain seizures was obvious. A highway, for example, that shouldn't have to zigzag around a home in its path. Years ago, the court recognized the need for the government to promote the greater good by seizing property in blighted areas. Defining blighted, of course, is rather like defining pornography. It is often in the eye of the beholder. Well, where Boston's West Enders saw a virtual community, developers saw a blight, now long since replaced by high-rises. Now the Supreme Court has taken that giant leap forward in a case involving a group of homeowners in New London, Connecticut, who challenged the plan to seize their homes to make way for a private development to include a hotel. And I'm just going to paraphrase this. In her dissent, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, "Nothing is to prevent the state from replacing any Motel 6 with a Ritz-Carlton, any home with a shopping mall." And that is a scary thought, just like they said.
That ruling has went far and wide across the United States. It's ticked off a lot of people.
Well, it's one article in particular, and I agree with it, is the next article that I have here. They basically state that this is violating a key clause of the Fifth Amendment, where we're supposed to have protections against unjust takings by the government. We're not supposed to have any property or liberty taken without due process. Well, when you have a situation where someone has more money and they want to make more money, they seem to have made an exception to this. The big money wins. And, it's a sad day in America where, your home is no longer a sacred place. It's at the whim and caprice of government officials now, whether or not you own and control your sacred place, your home. But what did you have to say about that,
Would
Doc?
you define the word caprice that you use?
Well, caprice, quick, without any forethought, just someone that, or some form of thinking that is just not based upon someone sitting there and weighing it out. They're basically, doing this
it's a partner.
without wisdom.
It's a partner to whim.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on a whim.
Whim
Based
and
on a
caprice.
whim. Oh, well, our buddies over there at the Ritz-Carlton are building a hotel. Well, we'll get these guys out of there for them, basically. That's what it comes down to. I don't care how legalese language they use. The effect and the effect of what they've done is quite clear. And not only is the effect clear, but the whole rationale is clear. We can't let the legal establishment blind us to what they're doing by saying, oh, well, it was a legal opinion and it was just the technical issue arose and it was based soundly on law, legal principles, The majority of people should be able to see right through that. If you have any common sense, it's basically big money paying for what they're attempting to do, and the justice is not, of course, not able to have enough wisdom to see that this is wrong. Blinded by the money, obviously. Maybe they were fearful that, or maybe they got one of those trips that the judges get every now and then by these lobbying groups, send them off somewhere for private training on a nice remote island so that they can have a little vacation. I'm sure you What were your thoughts on that, John? I know you're
I'm not much
not
interested
familiar with that.
no, I'm not much interested in any public body meeting outside of public access, and they'll do it from time to time. In fact, our in this county, Board of Supervisors wanted to have a closed door session, and they couldn't think of a good reason why it should be closed door, but they would trade off members of of the board so they could listen to what was going on. That is really cagey business in order to keep the public out of the mainstream. I thought the public were the masters. I thought the employees and the supervisors were the servants of government. Apparently, our servants have taken over. Now, in a domestic situation, if your maid decided to take over your household, you would probably take action pretty swiftly, and it would probably and it could wind up with the maid being fired. Perhaps we should consider that sort of action with our servants. Do you think so, Terrance?
Well, I think we should be voting them out. One other comment from the Lee Harris from the Tech Station, TechCentralStation.com, I think is on point. And he's quoted as saying, "A nation that has entrusted its civil life to lawyers and professors has embarked on a course that can only have one destination, the tyranny of a few over the lives of a many." And I think that's what happened in this incident. There should be, naturally speaking, natural law, a right for someone to have their own dwelling and not have it violated. Apparently, we're not a nation that respects that anymore, according to the Supreme Court. One other thing I wanted to touch upon here was an article from the HeraldToday.com. Justice Kennedy, lawyers must defend judiciary from attacks. Because we've seen a surge in verbal attacks on the judiciary here the past year or so. And, you know, I think that it's justified. But Justice Kennedy, the Supreme Court, says that lawyers must defend the judiciary. Well, they're going to need the lineup of the 1978 Pittsburgh Steelers to defend them again from me. I'll tell you that. This article by Mike Snyder, HeraldToday.com, he's quoted as saying, "Lawyers should speak up and explain the judicial process when judges come under attack." U.S. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy told members of the Florida Bar, "When judges are attacked unfairly, it's proper for the bar, over the course of time, in a professional and elegant way, to explain to the public the meaning of the rule of law." Well, I'm sorry, but I don't need no one to explain the meaning of the rule of law to me. When you have a judge that sits there and ignores the issues being presented to it, or, in the case that we just explained about, allowed for a key provision of the Constitution, of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, to go largely ignored, and this was the highest court in the nation, U.S. Supreme Court. I think that there's nothing to be explained other than the fact that these guys are clowns. There's nothing. And it's not to say that anything they're doing is funny, but it is to say that it's a joke. Hell, you might as well have Bozo and Krusty making these rulings and opinions. And the key thing that Bozo and Krusty, they're both clowns. Well, I would say that all these guys that made this opinion are in fact clowns. Did you have any comment on that, John, or not?
Don.
No. You're doing a good
Okay.
job, Clarence.
Okay.
No, I was rather shocked when I heard this blatant nonsense about if there is a business interest in New London, that rises above the selfish interest of a single citizen who may have lived there for years and years and years, and that may be his only home. He has no place to move, and it's more than just a simple inconvenience for him to pick up and go somewhere else, simply because some other private interest wants that property and could make a killing on some kind of a business venture. I can see the idea perhaps wouldn't be wise to build 3/4 of a mile of extra highway in order to go around a farmer's field.
But this is
But
what they were saying was, let's get rid of these homes so we can have a more of a private development here
right,
and get more tax revenue, and that's how they're trying to use it. So, well, we'll get more tax revenue off it. It wasn't directly for the government; it was for the private developers. And then they try to say, well, we can have some tax revenue, so then therefore it's going to help out the government anyway. So we're just going to want the Supreme Court to ignore the Constitution on this one.
I wonder if there could be some money handed under the table too.
Well, it sounds to me like there was a lot of money handed under the table, and that
people
was a key
in
basis for their opinion.
The people in control in the government, they're getting a little money here that we don't know about when they let their buddies come in and build on this property where they push these people out.
we
Yeah.
had a similar example of that in Indianola, where a little church wanted to move downtown and buy a building that had been vacated down there, and the city council didn't want that because the church would not be paying property tax. Of course, the clientele for the church lived downtown, and they wanted to minister to the people downtown, Indianola, but the council said no, that for business reasons, will not let the church populate the downtown area because they won't be paying the taxes on the
Crazy.
property like someone else could. So we have examples right here in River City that.
And I'm sure there's
Sure.
many in the Council Bluffs, Omaha area as well. Some of the other quotes from Justice Kennedy, Supreme Court Justice Kennedy. We want a debate on what the law does and what it means, he added. Judges aren't immune from criticism, and neither are their decisions. What is worrisome is when criticism isn't just focused on a decision, but at the judiciary, and increasingly individual judges. Lawyers can act as an intermediary between the decisions made by judges and the larger society by explaining. Quote, when the judiciary is under attack, the bar disengaged, the public indifferent, and critics scornful, then this idea of judicial independence might be under a real threat. And then he says, judicial independence is so that a judge can do what he has to do or what she must do. And another quote, it would be a tragedy if the American people ignored or neglected the idea of judicial independence just when the rest of the world is on the threshold of gaining it themselves. Well, I think what is a threat to not only us as Americans is the whole idea of judicial independence anyway. Who is to say that one body of government should be independent from the rest of the people and the rest of government as a whole? It's not that way now, and I think that they hide behind this idea of judicial independence as a means to basically do as they want and do what they can. But the big threat is injustice, and there's a lot of injustice going on. When we have court decisions that do not make any bit of sense in keeping with what are supposed to be our founding documents, the Constitution, and we have an injustice such as this, it would say like Johnny Cochran, any threat, a threat to justice in one place is a threat to justice everywhere. And we've got a big threat to not only your property rights, but all of our property rights. When we have the judiciary of the United States basically saying a private developer can come in and take it and do as he or she wants with it. That's my 2 cents on it.
Okay.
That reminds me of a email I got. I can only quote half of it, but the rat overheard the husband and wife in the house saying they got a big rat trap. So the rat goes out to the outside and speaks to the cow and the hog and the horse and all the other animals out there. Please help me. I heard they got a big rat trap in there to catch me. Oh, it's none of my concern, the other animals said. And so don't bother us with that. You just take care of yourself. And so the rat walked off with no help. And the next day, the wife got sick. And so the neighbors came in to help, and they had to butcher the cow to feed the neighbors when they came in. And the story goes on and on. Pretty soon, all the other animals, they were killed for food. And then the wife ended up dying, and, and they had to have money to pay the burial expense and everything. That just left the rat, and the rat was still alive, as I remember. But it's just a story to emphasize how important we need to help our friends and neighbors, even though we don't think it really applies to us. And that's the way it is with the DHS battle. Parents out here are losing their children right and left, and your neighbor down the street that has their children or grandchildren, and the DHS is not bothering, well, they're not worried. Don't bother us. Don't ask us for help.
And the thing is, another thing, and I think this guy touched on in his article, can the people have too much respect for the law? I think a lot of people just throw up their hands and say, oh, well, it must have been the right thing because the law did it, or a legal body did it, or the judge said it was okay. We've got about 14 or 15 cases decided every 2 weeks by the higher courts here in the nation, or in the state of Iowa, where they're basically sanctioning the termination of parental rights. Should we be in uproar about this? I think we should. We've got a lot of cases whereby the kids could have been put in the homes of relatives, grandparents. Well, the grandparents' rights were terminated. That whole thing was thrown out by the courts a few years ago. So, we can't, grandparents aren't entitled to their kids anymore. We're just basically giving these kids over to foster homes and, at the expense of the taxpayers. And not all of these foster homes are much better, or some of them are even worse than the situations with which these kids were in the first place. So we need to be looking at alternatives. And, that's one other thing. I wanted to touch on something back related to the judges here real quick. And I'll go back to our quote here by William Hepworth Dixon. Every dog in office is obeyed with such unquestioning meekness that every dog in office is tempted to become a cur. Well, we've got December 31st, 2006. We've got some curs coming up for retention vote. That's something that we're going to be talking about here. We need to be voting these curs out of office. There's a lot of curs across the state of Iowa. Would you show the list of the curs, sir?
Just a moment.
I should also, cur meaning judges. Here we go. We've got, now I know this may be some time. This is a list of the Supreme Court, or Court of Appeals justices, and their dates. Could you show the dates in which they're actually up for a retention vote? Their term ends December 31st, 2006. Most of these don't end until 2006, so they've got quite a ways. You know, we've got to bear with them quite a while here for a while. If you guys can think of any judges here that we need to be voting off and give us some specific reasons, feel free to give us a call. Give me a call in particular. And John and Donna flash the number across the screen here. But we'll be throughout the next several months implementing a plan to not only evaluate these judges independently of the so-called Judicial Qualifications Commission standards, but within the vein of some common sense standards which will adequately weigh the fitness of these judicial officers. And that's something that we're going to be bringing to you week by week, and as we progress with this movement across the state to vote out Iowa judges. Did you have some comments on either of the judges, John or John?
No.
Okay. There was one in particular. I seen District 2, or actually it was District, which one was the district for Story County? Is that District?
That's District 2.
District 2. There was a couple in
It has a
particular.
reputation.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple in particular up there. Judge Dale Rue. I call him the Screw, because if you want to get the Screw, go in front of Judge Rule. You'll definitely get it. There's a couple other ones. I think there was, heck, all the ones on the Supreme Court, with the exception of David Wiggins. I think David Wiggins is a pretty good judge, from what I've seen of his opinion. And from observing him in action at the oral arguments on the ethical board that they were debating about a couple months ago, that was supposed to handle not only the attorney's ethical complaints, but the prosecutor's ethical complaints. I think that he probably was one of the only ones that gave some tough questions to the lawyers that were arguing against having the prosecutors evaluated by the same standards as the lawyers. You know, not too many of the judicial officers that care about the processes and some of the things that are supposed to take place as far as ethics in that profession. You know, hell, when you only have about 7 ethical rules, you know, you can't really say there is a whole lot of ethics there. But
And they're pretty loosely knit as far as their...
And when you have only 7 ethical rules, and they're loosely interpreted as the ethical rules, or the canons that the Supreme Court or the judges are supposed to go by here in the state, you can't say there's a whole lot of ethics going on there. But
Okay.
yeah, just 2006. So we've got almost about a year and a half here, but might as well start drumming up the support now, or the lack of support for some of these judges, I should say.
You bet.
But I'll defer to you, John and Don, because that's all I've had to say for this part of the show.
One of the tragic things that happens in child abuse cases happens to remove children from their homes, or to remove a person from the home, which disrupts family life. But removal of the children is one of the most difficult things. Don, you had a booklet that you were going to show us. Maybe we can put that up, and it says something like, "The state has my child. What can I do?" Can you tell us a little bit about that book and what the state recommends? I think this is a Bar Association book, but I think you've gone over it enough to realize that there are some helpful hints in there that could be used to get your children returned to you in a flash. Well, of course, they love to keep them long enough to ruin them first, and then return them. These booklets are available at your friendly DHS office in your village. Okay, Don.
You're right. There's a lot of good comments that can come out of this book, but also I take some of it with a grain of salt. We've referred to this book before, and I decided I would go on down the line here and go to another page that we haven't referred to. The top line says, "Who can I talk to if I have a problem?" That's a good question. Talk to your social worker, it says. Your social worker's job is to help families get back together. Sometimes they can make me laugh. If you have trouble with visits, services, court, or anything else, tell your social worker right away. Well, there may be a time to talk to your social worker, but the longer you're in the system, sooner you come to hopefully the conclusion that your social worker may be not out there to do you any good. Next one, talk to your counselor. A counselor or someone at the service agency can also help with your problems. Sure, they're also mandatory reporters, and they can report you and keep this game rolling. So be careful with all these people. Talk to your friends and relatives. Now, you take that with a grain of salt, too. But if you got a friend out there, it might pay to talk to them. Then it goes on. Part of being a good parent is knowing who to go to for help. Find people like your minister or neighbor to help you now. There are some good ministers out there that'll help you. And some ministers, I hate to say this, but they have to respect the state before they help their people in their congregation.
Maybe they have too much respect for the law.
Too much respect?
Yeah, as an article that I just read was saying.
Yes, I agree with you. But the minister should be making his decisions based on the Bible, and God wants to protect the family.
Exactly.
Talk to your lawyer. Well, I recommend you don't have a court-appointed lawyer. If you want to keep your kids, defend the case yourself. Learn how to do it. Talk to other people that have done it pro se. Do it without a lawyer. If you have a problem with a service, that's something that the DHS social worker hands out to you. It's a free service, but be careful with some of these free things that come from the DHS. It says, tell your social worker right away. Oh, there's another saying that we've come up with. Parents have nothing to hide. Well, I believe you do when it comes to a social worker sometimes. I'm not telling you to lie to a social worker, but I'm telling you some of the things that a social worker hears from you just may trip the trigger and you'll never see your children again.
Along that line, though, whenever you're being interviewed by anyone from government, be sure that you know what the boundaries are of that interview. You are not required to give anything that is not relevant to that particular investigation, and that person should know that you are going you may sound like you're withholding information, but if the information that is being requested, like how were you raised when you were a child, that is not relevant to the current discussion as to why your child was spanked too hard or feels that he was spanked too severely. And he happened to tell the school counselor, and the school counselor tells the social worker. There are boundaries to those interviews, and when they tell you you don't have anything to hide, well, sorry, but I do recognize boundaries in my behavior, and I recognize boundaries in my interview. Don?
Another one says here, go to services. That's these free services that the DHS provides. Well, I remember 20 years ago when they were offered to me, and I thought that was the best thing. Sure, I'm out. I was out there to improve myself as a parent, uh, but I came to the conclusion after a few years with DHS, if you want to improve yourself, don't go to the DHS for help. Uh, I remember they had me go see a film, and one film showed how, I don't want to get too graphic here, but a boy had to go to the bathroom. So that they showed how that is done out in the countryside. And let's see, there was another one where they put a boy and a girl together in a bathtub. Uh, but that's wrong in the eyes of the DHS. So why are they teaching? Why are they brainwashing a parent to believe something that it should be okay to a certain extent, but the end result, I see it as a way to trick the parents to lose their kids forever. So these services they give, uh, I
Sounds
would,
like a sinister attempt to try to um, make you believe you did something that you didn't do. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
see if you believe in spanking. The Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. If you believe the Bible and the DHS says don't spank your child, you'll end up losing your children if you follow the DHS rules. I can almost guarantee that. Um, next paragraph. It's up to you. That's right. It all falls back on your shoulders, parents. DHS, the court, and the service agency all want you to succeed. I don't know about that. But
It depends on what they mean by succeed.
they, all these agencies,
Succeed in losing your children?
they make plenty of money off of you as long as you jump through their hoops. If you don't want to, if you don't accept their help, this is intimidation, it sounds like. The court may think you don't want your child back. If you miss enough services, you could lose your child forever. Well, that's true. As long as you make everybody think that you're going to follow through with everything, but then you don't show up, they'll use that against you in court. So if you're going to jump through their hoops, you better go to the services, or you better state right in the beginning you don't want those services. You're not going to waste your time. You're here just to get your kids back. You ought to fight on that issue. Okay, let me change pages here. Oh, we're out of time, John, so I'll just turn it back over to you.
Okay, there's a couple of numbers here that may be helpful to you. If you need assistance with your case, we're not attorneys, so we don't offer the attorney route for solving your problems, but we can be helpful to you in a number of ways here. Well, we want to say thank you for tuning in to the CPI report. We want to say thanks to Terrance as well. So we'll see you next.